that my name is Gal, and I'm Jewish, and we have had enough of Jew hatred.
It started with a single post. A tribute meant to spread love ended up igniting a Hollywood wildfire, and the person who wasn't mentioned said more by being left out than any caption ever could.
We're great, we're exhausted.
Yeah, you are.
It's messy.
Rachel Zegler thought she was doing something sweet. On March 21st, 2025, she uploaded a heartfelt Instagram post celebrating the release of Snow White. It was packed with behind-the-scenes snapshots, smiles on set, warm hugs, and emotional thank yous to the crew that shaped 4 years of her life. It was supposed to be a nostalgic, feel-good moment, but that's where things took a turn, because something, or rather, someone, was glaringly absent.
Like, when you leave the scene, I turned to the camera and I was like, Gal's mad. But then you were FaceTiming your kids right after, being like, hi, so much. It's so good.
Gal Gadot, the actress who played the evil queen, was nowhere to be seen. Not in a photo, not in a tag, not even in a passing mention. Fans noticed immediately, and questions began flying. Was this just an oversight, or was it something more? Here's where it gets interesting. Gal wasn't just a side character. She was Rachel's co-lead, the face of one of Disney's most iconic villains, and a central part of the film's marketing. Yet Rachel had erased her from this public love letter to the project. You won't believe how fans responded.
We would see people not condemning Hamas, but celebrating, justifying, and cheering on a massacre of Jews.
Some tried to give Rachel the benefit of the doubt. Others started digging, and the deeper they looked, the messier things became. Hold that thought, because what they uncovered next cracked this story wide open.
What would you say to those who are just kind of overly critiquing the film at this point? You've worked so hard on it.
I'm getting on a call. Here.
2 actresses, 2 roles, and 2 very different worldviews, colliding behind the camera in a way that no one saw coming. After Rachel's post snubbed Gal, fans began to speculate that this wasn't just personal, it was political, and they had receipts. Gal Gadot is Israeli, a former soldier in the Israeli Defense Forces, and someone who has been openly supportive of Israel throughout her career. Rachel Zegler, meanwhile, has made no secret of her support for Palestine. She didn't whisper it, she tweeted it, loudly, publicly, during filming. But that's not all. When Rachel posted Free Palestine while Snow White was still in production, insiders say the set atmosphere changed instantly. What was once a high-budget Disney dreamland suddenly became a cold, divided workspace. And the reason this matters? Because the timing of that tweet wasn't just awkward, it was explosive. Gal's public comments about the rising anti-Semitism in the world had already placed her in a politically charged spotlight. Rachel's post wasn't just a difference of opinion, it looked like a direct challenge. Fans began connecting dots and the theory exploded. This wasn't a professional clash, it was a political war simmering beneath the surface. But this wasn't the only thing dividing them. What comes next reveals an even deeper divide.
Because this woman is a pig, and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
Woman wakes up to FaceTime her kids. The other is still figuring out how to furnish her first apartment. These two weren't just co-stars. They were from completely different universes. Gal Gadot is 39, a mother of 4, married since 2008, and a veteran of red carpets, global press tours, and blockbuster franchises. Her world revolves around family, structure, and stability. Rachel Zegler, by contrast, is 23, still new to fame, still learning how to navigate award shows, red carpets, and media scrutiny, all while trying to maintain a sense of self. But here's the twist.
Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing, before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
Yeah, but they're all lunatic. I mean, how many people in Hollywood, maybe not to this extent.
This wasn't just a generational gap, it was a lifestyle canyon. Gal would go from a heated scene straight to FaceTiming her kids, while Rachel was still learning how to handle viral interviews and paparazzi. Their priorities, their pace, their energy, it was all different, and it gets crazier.
What would you do when you have this narcissistic nightmare trying to ruin a film?
Insiders hinted that even off-camera interactions were strained. No gossip, no bonding, no late-night trailer chats, just awkward professionalism. It was like watching 2 co-workers who barely tolerated each other trying to fake friendship for the sake of the cameras. But don't scroll yet, because somehow things got even more tense in public. Smiles can lie. And when Gal and Rachel showed up together for the Los Angeles premiere, fans immediately sensed something wasn't right. The premiere should have been a celebration. After 4 years in the making, Snow White was finally hitting the screen. But when Gal and Rachel stood side by side for photos, the vibe was ice cold. Tight smiles, stiff poses, eyes that sparkled with everything but joy. It didn't take a body language expert to see something was off, but here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Fans began dissecting every frame like detectives at a crime scene. The distance between their shoulders, the tension in their hands, the way Gal's smile faded a fraction too soon. It was like watching two co-workers at a forced office party, pretending to be besties for the camera, while barely tolerating each other behind the scenes. And then came the comparisons. Footage of other Disney premieres, co-stars laughing, hugging, glowing with camaraderie, only made this one feel more awkward. People weren't just speculating now, they were convinced. But hold that thought, because Rachel wasn't about to let the silence speak for her. What she said next only fueled the fire. Rachel didn't name names, but her words felt like arrows, and fans were left wondering if she was trying to make peace or throw subtle shade. In the weeks following the premiere, Rachel sat down for multiple interviews. She spoke about women in Hollywood, about how the media loves to pit actresses against each other, and how important it is to support fellow women in the industry. They were powerful messages, sure, but something was missing. She never mentioned Gal, not once, not directly, not even in passing, and that silence spoke volumes. Here's where it gets trickier. Some fans saw her statements as damage control, a way to smooth over tension without having to admit it ever existed. Others weren't buying it. To them, this was strategic. Carefully worded PR spins designed to make her look like the peacemaker, without ever taking responsibility for the original snub. And just when it seemed like the fire might die down, it flared up again. Because Disney was watching this unfold in real time, and they weren't happy. What they did next proves just how serious this was getting. When Disney panics, you know the storm is real. And behind the scenes, the house of Mouse was scrambling to contain the chaos. Ordinarily, a live-action remake of a classic like Snow White would get the full red carpet treatment, massive press junkets, glamorous after-parties, a global marketing blitz, but not this time. Instead, Disney opted for a subdued premiere, minimal press, and almost zero media fanfare. It was a whisper where there should have been a roar, but that's not all. Insiders claim Disney deliberately scaled things down to avoid giving the drama more oxygen. They hoped the public would focus on the film, not the feud, but it backfired. The lack of promotion only made fans dig deeper. Suddenly, every absence, every awkward glance, every vague quote became part of the puzzle. And here's the real kicker. This wasn't just about Gal and Rachel. The controversy was now overshadowing the film itself. Disney wasn't launching a fairy tale. They were fighting off a PR nightmare. But believe it or not, the casting drama wasn't done yet. What happened next took the conversation in a whole new direction. This was supposed to be a fairy tale comeback. Instead, it triggered one of the most polarizing debates Disney has ever faced. When Rachel Zegler was announced as Snow White back in 2021, it sounded like a dream. She was young, immensely talented, and had a voice built for musicals. Director Mark Webb raved about her gifts. Fans cheered the idea of a modern-day princess with fresh energy, but then came the backlash. Because the name Snow White isn't just a title, it's a description. A character defined in the original tale by skin as white as snow. And Rachel, being of Colombian and Polish descent, didn't fit that traditional image. The internet exploded. It gets crazier. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds. Conservative pundits like Ben Shapiro called it a betrayal of the story's origins. Others saw it as a win for representation. Suddenly, this wasn't about one role. It was about what the role symbolized. And just when you thought it couldn't get more heated, Disney rewrote the story itself. Stick around because this rewrite flipped everything upside down. They didn't just recast Snow White, they reimagined her. And that decision lit a cultural fire that's still burning. In this version, Snow White isn't named for her skin tone. Instead, she's a survivor of a snowstorm. The near-death experience becomes her origin, not her beauty. She's no longer dreaming of love or waiting for a prince. She's training to be a leader. And just like that, Disney tossed tradition out the window. Rachel explained the change with pride. To her, this was about evolution, giving young viewers a heroine who represented strength, not just charm. One of the core points, she said, is remembering how strong you actually are. A powerful message, but it didn't land with everyone. And here's the twist. For every fan who felt inspired, another claimed the heart of the story was lost. Some said the changes were woke nonsense. Others praised it as long overdue progress. Either way, it got people talking, and that's exactly what Disney needed. But what does this mean for future fairy tales? That's where things get even more complicated. What makes a classic classic? And at what point does rewriting history become erasing it? That was the question tearing through social media. On one side were fans who believed stories like Snow White should evolve with the times. On the other were those who saw Disney's choices as unnecessary tampering with sacred source material. It wasn't just a movie, it was a battlefield for a much bigger culture war. Film historians began weighing in. Leonard Maltin said fairy tales have always changed with society. Stories stories adapt, they grow. But that didn't calm the outrage. In fact, it fueled it. The more Disney tried to justify the change, the more critics claimed they were abandoning tradition just to be politically correct. And the craziest part? Rachel was caught in the crossfire. No matter how well she performed, no matter how thoughtful, her interviews, she became the symbol of the debate itself. But wait, because the biggest reveal was yet to come. Gal Gadot had stayed silent through it all, until now. After months of silence, Gal finally spoke, and what she said sent shockwaves across the industry. In an emotional post, Gal didn't name names, but her message was clear. "My name is Gal, and I'm Jewish," she wrote, "and we've had enough of Jew hatred." It wasn't just a statement, it was a stand, and suddenly, everything made sense. Gal wasn't just staying quiet to be diplomatic. She was biting her tongue in. A storm of political tension, personal betrayal, and global headlines. But now, her silence had broken, and the floodgates were open. The timing was no accident. Her words echoed not just through Hollywood, but across social media, where fans finally saw the full picture. This wasn't just a rift between actresses. It was a story about identity, ideology, and what it means to coexist in a world divided. And now we know why this feud wasn't just another celebrity clash. It was a reflection of something much bigger. Stick with us, because what comes next could reshape how we tell stories forever.